Manurva Hargrave was a shadow in the town of Northwood. She moved through the streets like a whisper. People saw her, but they did not always notice her. She had a way of blending into the background. She was like the pale winter sun that gives no warmth. Her face was often turned downward, her eyes looking at the cobblestones instead of the people around her. It was as if she were counting the stones, one by one, on her way to the market. She never seemed to be in a hurry. Her steps were slow and deliberate, each one placed carefully as if the ground might break. Her appearance was as quiet as her spirit. She wore simple dresses in muted colors. They were always gray, or a soft brown, or a faded blue. The fabric never rustled when she walked. It was as if sound itself was afraid to be near her. Her hair, a pale shade of ash, was always pulled back in a tight, neat bun. No loose strands ever escaped to dance in the wind. She was a picture of perfect control and stillness. Her hands were often clasped in front of her, her long, thin fingers intertwined. She looked like a woman forever waiting for something that would never arrive. The people of Northwood had grown used to her silence. When she entered a shop, the usual chatter would soften for a moment. It was not out of fear, but out of a strange kind of respect. Her quiet was so complete that it seemed to demand the same from others. She would point to what she needed: a loaf of bread, a small sack of flour. She would hand over the exact coins without a word. The shopkeeper would nod, and she would leave as silently as she had entered. The air in the room seemed to hold its breath until she was gone, and only then would the normal sounds of life return. Her eyes were perhaps the most unsettling thing about her. On the rare occasion she looked up, her gaze was distant. Her eyes were a very light blue, almost colorless. They did not seem to see the person in front of her. Instead, they looked through them, at some point far away that no one else could see. It was a look that held no emotion, not sadness, not anger, not joy. It was simply empty. It made people feel as if they were not really there. It was easier, most people found, to simply look away and let her pass by in her own silent world. Manurva Hargrave's presence was a study in stillness. In a town where people gestured and laughed and called out to one another, she was a fixed point. She might stand by the town well for a long time, not drawing water, just standing. Her hands would be folded at her waist, her head slightly bowed. The children playing nearby would sometimes fall quiet, looking at the still lady in the gray dress. They did not understand her, so they left her alone. Mothers would call their children away, not wanting to disturb the strange peace that surrounded Mrs. Hargrave. She was a part of the town's landscape, like an old, silent tree. Her silence was not just an absence of words, it was something heavier. It felt like a decision. When others spoke to her, she would sometimes offer a small, tight nod, but she never offered a word in return. It was not that she was rude. It felt more like she was unable to speak, or perhaps she had forgotten how. The townspeople wondered what thoughts filled such a quiet mind. Did she think about the weather? Did she notice the changing seasons? Or was her mind a blank, empty space, as still and quiet as her outward appearance? No one knew the answer. This quiet was most noticeable when she was with her husband, Mr. Hargrave. He was not a silent man. He was tall and broad, with a voice that carried. When they walked together, he would sometimes speak to her in a low tone. She would walk beside him, her eyes on the ground, never responding. He did not seem to expect a reply. It was as if he were speaking to himself, or to the air around her. The contrast between them was stark. He was a man of substance and sound, and she was his silent, drifting echo. It made their walks through town a strange performance. People often wondered if she was happy. It was a question that hung in the air but was never asked. Happiness was a noisy thing. It was laughter and conversation and sharing stories. Manurva Hargrave showed none of these things. Her face was a placid mask. If she felt joy, it was a secret she kept locked away. If she felt sorrow, It was buried just as deep. She was a puzzle that the town could not solve. She lived among them, but she was not one of them. She was a visitor from a quiet, unknown place. One Tuesday morning, the air in the general store was thick with the smell of sawdust and dried herbs. Prudence Gable was there, a woman known for her kind heart and her inability to leave things alone. She saw Manurva Hargrave standing by the bolts of fabric. Manurva was touching a piece of yellow calico, her fingers tracing the tiny floral pattern. It was the brightest color anyone had ever seen her touch. For a moment, a flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, crossed her still face. To Prudence, it looked like a small crack in a frozen pond, a sign of life underneath. Prudence decided to act. She believed that no one should be so alone. With a warm smile, she walked over to Manurva. "That's a lovely piece, isn't it?" Prudence said, her voice soft. "It would make a beautiful dress for spring. The color would bring out the blue in your eyes." She spoke with genuine kindness, hoping to draw a response, even a small one. Manurva's hand froze on the fabric. She did not pull away, but the life seemed to drain from her touch. Her head turned slightly, her gaze not quite meeting Prudence's eyes, but acknowledging her presence. "I always think a little bit of color can brighten up the day," Prudence continued, undeterred. "My mother used to say that wearing yellow was like wearing a piece of sunshine." She pointed to another bolt of cloth, a soft green, or this one. "It reminds me of the new leaves on the oak trees." She was trying to build a bridge of simple, friendly words. She wanted to let Mrs. Hargrave know that she was seen, that she was not invisible. For a brief, hopeful second it seemed to be working. Manurva's lips parted as if a word were about to form. The moment was fragile, like a soap bubble. Prudence held her breath, waiting. She saw a flicker in Manurva's pale eyes, a hint of a person looking back at her. It was the most connection she had ever felt with the quiet woman. The air in the store seemed to grow still, waiting for a sound that had not been heard in years. A word, a name, a simple hello. Prudence leaned in slightly, her expression open and encouraging. The world seemed to shrink to the small space between the two women, a space filled with unspoken possibility and the scent of yellow calico. Suddenly, a large shadow fell over them. Manurva. The voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a knife. Mr. Hargrave had appeared from nowhere, his presence instantly changing the atmosphere. He was standing behind his wife, his hand resting on her shoulder. It was a gesture that could have been seen as affectionate, but it felt heavy, possessive. His grip seemed to anchor her to the spot. The small, hopeful light in Manurva's eyes vanished instantly. Her mouth closed, the unspoken word dying on her lips. She became a statue once more. Mr. Hargrave looked at Prudence, his eyes cold and dark. He did not smile. "My wife does not need any new dresses," he said. His tone was final. It was not an explanation. It was a dismissal. He was not just ending the conversation. He was erasing it. He made Prudence feel as if she had done something wrong, as if she had trespassed on private property. His gaze was sharp and accusatory. Prudence felt a chill, despite the warmth of the store. She took a step back, her friendly intentions turning to ash in her mouth. Without another word to Prudence, he guided his wife away from the fabrics. His hand never left her shoulder. "We have what we came for," he said, his voice low and directed only at Manurva. She moved with him, her feet shuffling obediently. She did not look back at the yellow cloth. She did not look back at Prudence. It was as if the entire encounter had never happened. They walked to the counter, paid for a small bag of nails, and left the store. The little bell above the door jingled their departure, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. Prudence stood alone by the bolts of fabric, her heart beating a little too fast. The store owner, Mr. Finley, busied himself behind the counter, carefully avoiding her eyes. He had seen the whole thing, as had the two other customers in the store. No one spoke. The incident was over, but the feeling it left behind was cold and unsettling. The husband's control over his wife was absolute. It was not the loud, angry control of a bully. It was something quieter, deeper, and far more complete. It was the control of a man who owned not just his wife's time, but her very voice. After the incident at the general store, the unspoken rule in Northwood became, well, a whole lot clearer. The Hargraves were to be left alone. Prudence Gable, who was usually so talkative, did not speak of what happened, but, the story spread anyway, carried in quiet glances, and those knowing nods. People understood. It was just better not to try to speak to Manurva. It was safer, honestly, to let the Hargraves live in their own separate world. The community here had a strong sense of privacy, and they extended this courtesy to that strange couple. They respected the high, invisible wall that Mr. Hargrave had built around his wife. The townspeople did not ask questions. They did not gossip loudly about the Hargraves on street corners. Instead, their curiosity just simmered beneath the surface. Folks wondered, but, well, they wondered in silence. Whenever Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave walked through town, people would give them a wide berth. They'd nod politely to Mr. Hargrave and pretend not to notice his wife's downcast eyes. It was like a silent agreement, really, a way of keeping the peace. To interfere, as Prudence had tried to do, was to invite a coldness that no one wanted. The town chose, quite simply, to look away. Another thing the town did not speak of was the fact that the Hargraves had no children. In a place where families were large and children's laughter filled the air, their childless home was, well, conspicuous. It was just another layer of their strangeness. Did they choose not to have children, or was it a private sorrow they carried? People had their own theories, whispered behind closed doors. Some said it was a blessing, for what kind of life would a child have in that silent house? Others felt a pang of sympathy for Manurva, imagining her quiet, empty rooms. But their privacy was respected above all. Northwood was a place where people believed in minding their own business. The Hargraves' life was their own. If their life was unusual, well, that was their right. The community watched, and they wondered, but they didn't judge. They simply accepted the Hargrave household as a local mystery, a permanent puzzle at the edge of town. Their silence was met with the town's own form of silence, a quiet, watchful distance that asked no questions and expected no answers. The wall around the Hargraves was built by Mr. Hargrave, but, honestly, it was maintained by the whole town. The Hargrave household was not just the husband and the silent wife. There was a third person, a man named Thaddeus Coulter. His role was a complete mystery to the town. He was not old enough to be Mr. Hargrave's father, nor young enough to be his son. He was not a relative, as far as anyone knew. He simply lived with them. Thaddeus was a tall, bony man with a long, serious face. He had thinning gray hair, and hands that were stained with something dark, like ink or grease. He dressed in plain, durable clothes like a workman, but no one knew what work he did. Thaddeus was the one who did most of the shopping for the household. He would come into town twice a week with a long, detailed list. Unlike the Hargraves, he would speak to people. His voice was low and gravelly, and he spoke in short, precise sentences. He never smiled, but he was always polite. "Good morning, Mr. Finley," he would say. "I require 3 pounds of potatoes." He was courteous, but distant. He answered direct questions but never offered any extra information. He created a different kind of wall around himself, one made of polite, impenetrable formality. People tried to learn more about him, but their attempts always failed. "Quite a storm we had last night, Thaddeus," someone might say. "Indeed," he would reply, and nothing more. "Is that a new coat?" "Looks warm," another might try. "It is sufficient," he would say, turning his attention back to his list. He was a master of the short, conversation-ending reply. He never spoke of the Hargraves. He never mentioned Manurva. He never explained his connection to the family. He was simply the man who lived with them, a third point in the strange triangle of their household. His presence only deepened the mystery. What did he do in that house all day? Some people thought he was a hired man, a caretaker for the property. Others whispered that he was a scholar or an inventor. and that Mr. Hargrave was his patron. A few imaginative souls even suggested he was a kind of guard, there to keep Minerva in, or to keep the world out. His serious face and stained hands could fit any of these theories. Thaddeus Coulter was another locked door in a house full of them. He was a living, walking question mark. Thaddeus Coulter's shopping trips were events of quiet observation for the townspeople. He moved through the market with a focused determination. He carried a heavy canvas bag and a list written on a long strip of paper. He never deviated from the list. If an item was not available, he would simply cross it off. He never substituted one thing for another. This precision was fascinating to the shopkeepers. It suggested a life of strict routine and unbending rules. Everything about the Hargrave household, it seemed, was governed by some hidden, complex order. He would begin at the baker's for a specific type of dark bread, then move to the butcher for a precise cut of meat. After that, he would visit the general store. Mr. Finley, the owner, knew to expect him every Tuesday and Friday. Thaddeus would stand at the counter and read from his list in his low, monotone voice. 1 box of candles, 1 bar of lye soap, 1 small tin of black polish. He would wait patiently as Mr. Finley gathered the items, his eyes scanning the shelves as if committing everything to memory. He was a careful and methodical man. His manners were impeccable, which made him all the more mysterious. He always said, "Please," and "Thank you." He counted his change carefully before putting it in a small leather pouch. He handled the goods with care, packing them into his canvas bag as if they were fragile artifacts. This carefulness was in stark contrast to the rough appearance of his stained hands. It was another contradiction that made people curious. He was a man of polite words and rough hands, of precise lists, and a vague, unknown purpose. He was an enigma who shopped for groceries. Once his shopping was complete, he would nod to the shopkeeper and leave. He never lingered. He never engaged in idle chat. His business in town was strictly business. As he walked back toward the Hargrave house at the edge of town, people would watch him go. The heavy bag seemed to hold more than just bread and soap. It seemed to hold the secrets of that quiet house. The town was left to wonder what meals were cooked with those ingredients, what floors were cleaned with that soap, and what purpose was served by the strange collection of items he carried home. It was the unusual items on Thaddeus Coulter's list that truly fueled the town's imagination. Alongside the normal requests for flour, salt, and beans, there were always stranger things. Mr. Finley at the general store kept a mental record of them. One week, Thaddeus requested a large quantity of copper wire and several small glass vials. Another week, it was a special order of concentrated black ink and a set of fine-tipped pens. These were not the typical purchases of a simple household. They hinted at some specific, ongoing project within the Hargrave home. These purchases were noted and quietly discussed. When Thaddeus bought several yards of thick, black velvet cloth, people wondered what it was for. It was too heavy for a dress and too somber for curtains. When he bought bags of strange-smelling dried herbs that were not for cooking, the town's apothecary raised an eyebrow but filled the order without question. The items did not fit together in any logical way. They were pieces of a puzzle with no picture on the box. They suggested science or art or something stranger altogether. The mystery grew with every shopping trip. The town doctor once saw Thaddeus leaving the apothecary with a package and asked him in a friendly way if someone at home was unwell. Thaddeus simply looked at him with his calm gray eyes and said, "Everyone is in good health, thank you." The answer was polite, but it closed the door firmly on any further inquiry. It made the purchases seem even more suspicious. If the herbs and chemicals were not for medicine, then what were they for? The town's imagination ran wild with possibilities, from alchemy to some unknown, intricate craft. The list of curiosities became a local legend. There was the time he bought a set of small, perfectly polished mirrors. There was the order for a specific kind of leather-bound book, with blank pages. And there was the recurring purchase of lye, far more than was needed for making soap. Each strange item was a clue that led nowhere. it only added another layer of shadow to the Hargrave house. The house was not just quiet, it was busy. But the nature of its business was a secret that Thaddeus Coulter's shopping list guarded well. And so, the Hargrave household remains a puzzle to the town of Northwood. The house stands at the edge of the woods, its windows like vacant eyes. Sometimes at night, a single light burns in an upstairs window, a faint yellow glow against the darkness, but no sounds ever escape the walls. No music, no arguments, no laughter. The silence that surrounds the house is as deep and complete as the silence of Manurva Hargrave herself. It is a place that exists within the town, but not as a part of it. It is an island of secrets in a sea of ordinary life. The people of Northwood have learned to live with the mystery. They see Minerva on her silent walks, a ghostly figure in gray. They see her husband, the guardian of her silence, his presence a constant warning. They see Thaddeus Coulter, the polite and enigmatic messenger, carrying his strange supplies home. The three of them form a strange, self-contained world. The townspeople watch them, they wonder about them, and they leave them alone. The questions hang in the air, unspoken but always present. What happens behind their closed doors? What is the nature of the bond that holds these three people together? Is Minerva a prisoner, or a willing participant in her own silence? Is Mr. Hargrave a cruel keeper, or a desperate protector? And what of Thaddeus Coulter, the man with the ink-stained hands and the secret list? Is he a servant, a partner, or something else entirely? The town has no answers. They only have their observations, their fragmented clues, and their endless, quiet speculation. The truth, whatever it may be, belongs only to the Hargraves. The story of the Hargrave household is a story without an end. It is a question that is never answered. It is a reminder that some lives are lived in the shadows, by rules that no one else can understand. The house at the edge of town will continue to stand, holding its secrets within its silent walls, and the people of Northwood will continue to look at it and wonder. They will wonder about the quiet lady, her watchful husband, and the mysterious man who lives with them. The unspoken question will remain a permanent part of the town's quiet, watchful heart.